What if Canada's next big trade fight starts with Lego bricks and ends with your grocery bill? Toronto weather to start your Sunday. Sunny, with a high of -6 and low of -16 degrees Celsius. Big picture on Canada-US relations. The Trump administration is turning up the heat ahead of trade talks. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has warned Prime Minister Mark Carney against what he called virtue signaling, as both sides head toward another round of CUSMA negotiations. Bessent signaled Washington is considering significant changes to the deal, and even suggested the U.S. might not need it. Remember, the U.S. has already slapped tariffs on Canadian exports, so the stakes for Ontario's economy are real, from manufacturing floors to your checkout line. His broader message: prioritize Canadians' interests over political posturing, and don't expect the U.S. to budge simply because of the relationship. Zoom out to Mexico, where a tariff spike on Chinese imports is squeezing plastic-heavy industries. Think toys from Lego and Mattel. Mexico's government says it's protecting domestic firms from cheaper Asian inputs and shoring up its hand ahead of USMCA deliberations. U.S. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, accuses China of routing goods through Mexico to dodge tariffs, and argues the deal shortchanges Washington. Mexican manufacturers say they'll stomach higher costs now if it pays off later at the negotiating table. For Toronto consumers and retailers, that could mean price and supply ripples on everything from toys to auto parts as the trade chessboard shifts. All of this is feeding back into Canadian politics. Conservatives are retooling their message to link Canada-US relations directly to affordability. Conservative strategist Jenny Byrne says geopolitics and a changing U.S. posture are driving up costs at home, and the party plans to push policies on trade, the military, and resource development to toughen Canada's bargaining position. At their national convention, Conservatives adopted a slate of policies, among them a stand your ground law, stricter crime measures, immigration reforms, and a call by more than 90% of delegates to eliminate DEI programs and defund CBC Radio Canada. The Ontario Progressive Conservatives, facing internal critiques about direction and clarity, reversed an initial decision to block media from part of their policy convention and later allowed coverage of Premier Doug Ford's speech after blowback. On leadership, Pierre Poilievre received an 87.4% endorsement in a leadership vote in Calgary, well above the threshold many in the party saw as necessary to quiet doubts after the last general election, when he lost a big polling lead and his Ottawa area seat. Members hailed the result as a show of unity and momentum heading into the next campaign, while Liberal MPs blasted the decision as doubling down on divisive politics. Poilievre has focused his pitch on immigration, crime, and the cost of living, and is credited internally for expanding the Conservative coalition and keeping the party's fundraising machine humming. On the left, the NDP leadership race has a clear money leader. Avi Lewis raised nearly $724,000 in the final 3 months of 2026, more than double what sitting MP Heather McPherson reported over the same period. Lewis logged 5,632 separate donations to McPherson's 2,300 and has brought in almost $780,000 since the race began in September. McPherson, who started stronger, stands at $415,490 as of December 31st. Fundraising doesn't vote, but history suggests it can be a signal. Think of previous contests where top fundraisers went on to win. The NDP is trying to rebuild after its worst showing in memory, when it lost party status in Parliament following Jagmeet Singh's resignation. McPherson is also making headlines on policy, urging Ottawa to sanction Canadian companies doing business with U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. She's calling for the federal government to deny export permits and pull public subsidies or contracts from those firms. This comes as U.S. federal agents have been deployed to cities like Los Angeles, Washington, Chicago, Charlotte, and Minneapolis, with ICE's role drawing fierce controversy. In Minneapolis, increased ICE activity has reportedly coincided with the shooting deaths of 2 U.S. citizens by federal agents, and the detention of a 5-year-old child, sparking protests demanding ICE leave the city. Expect this to test the line between Ottawa's values-driven foreign policy and the realities of cross-border business ties. Out west, the BC Conservatives are having their own leadership moment. Kamloops MLA Peter Millibar pitched himself as the experienced hand the party needs, making his case at a public meet-and-greet in Lumbee. He emphasized both his political resume and a practical leadership style, taking questions and laying out plans to shore up conservative support in a province where the party sees a chance to grow. Let's hit the court. In Orlando, the Magic stormed back to beat the Raptors 130-120. The difference was the fourth quarter, where Desmond Bane poured in 16 of his 32 points, breaking a late tie with a burst of three-pointers. Orlando drained 17 of 34 from deep, catching fire when it mattered. Paolo Banchero anchored the effort with 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists. For Toronto, Brandon Ingram led all scorers with 35, and Scotty Barnes was everywhere. 19 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 blocks. The Raptors led by as many as 14 late in the third, but the fourth quarter defense couldn't cool Orlando's shooters, and the momentum flipped. The Magic, for their part, have now strung together 2 wins after a 4-game skid. On the ice, the Maple Leafs finally snapped their 6-game losing streak, edging the Canucks 3-2 in a shootout. Austin Matthews and William Nylander delivered in the skills competition, and Joseph Woll was sharp with 28 saves. Matthews had a chance to end it earlier on a penalty shot in overtime, but Nikita Tolopilo, who was outstanding with 39 stops, got the better of him there. In regulation, Nicholas Roy and Max Domi scored for Toronto, while Jonathan Lekkerimäki and Tom Willander answered for Vancouver, a team that's now won just 2 of its last 17. 2 nuts to watch. William Nylander returned after missing 7 games with a groin injury, and Morgan Riley left with an upper body issue and did not return. The Leafs needed this one, and they got it the hard way. One more quick trade footnote to watch, as consumer brands feel the squeeze. Plastic inputs don't just shape toys. They ripple into packaging and auto components. As Mexico tightens the screws on Chinese imports, and Washington leans into leverage ahead of CUSMA talks, Canadian negotiators will be trying to shield key sectors without pushing prices higher for households already feeling stretched. That's it for today. If you find this mix of local sports, national politics, and economic storylines useful, follow and share the show. Your support helps us keep it sharp and accountable. Enjoy the sunshine, bundle up, and we'll talk tomorrow.